Hey guys, it's Brigitte with San Diego Seed Company, and I'm going to talk about two things that are really cool but often misunderstood. It's worm castings, which is basically worm poop, and worm tea, which is not something that we sit around and drink by the fire at night. I mean, you could, but I don't know how good it would be. But both of these things are really great for the garden, but people often misunderstand how they're used. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how they're used, how they're beneficial, what their shortcomings might be, and everything else that you need to know. But before I get into that, hit the like and subscribe button so you're notified anytime we put out a video. Okay, so we're really stoked that we now source an awesome local worm casting source. So this is directly from San Diego. What's really rad is this awesome farmer makes it in Santee, California, and she does a fabulous job. And really, you can think of worm castings as no different from horse manure. It's worm manure. It's worm poop, or the other word, which I'm not going to say because then Jeff will just, it's worm. So basically what this is, it's the byproducts of keeping a lot of worms in a concentrated area. And the reason why it's so great in the garden is because it's really a microbiology rich product, and it's adding tons of amazing things to your soil that you may not naturally have, especially if you're doing potted plants or raised beds where you've brought in a lot of soil from another source, and maybe you don't have a lot of worms yet, and so you're not getting a lot of that worm byproduct, which is really good and has a lot of microbiology in it. So what's important to remember about this is not a fertilizer. Although there are very small amounts of nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus and other nutrients in this, you would not use worm castings like you would use a fertilizer. Think of this more like an amendment. This is something that you're adding to your soil that is developing the whole soil profile to be healthy, thriving, and diverse. Let's take a look and see what it actually looks like. So it actually looks like really fabulous soil. Wouldn't it be amazing if all of our soil looked like that? And spoiler alert, ours at our garden does look like this, but that's after 8, almost 9 years of babying it. Now, if you want your soil to get closer to this profile, light, fluffy, dark, gorgeous, full of tons of organic matter, the best way to do that is to have a lot of diverse input into the soil that you put in your pots or your raised beds. And worm castings or worm manure is one of those things. So you can see this has been finely sifted, so it has a really great consistency. There's not big chunks of it. And this can be added anywhere in your garden, and there will be a really great benefit to it. But I always tell people, mind the cost of whatever product you're putting in there. And if you're getting this, it's always a really good input for pots or raised beds. And the reason being is this pot looks gorgeous, right? These flowers look amazing, but I can't tell you how many worms are actually living in there and thriving in there. Particularly in our climate where it gets really hot, this pot might heat up well past the temperature range where worms can actually thrive. So by adding in worm castings, I'm basically speeding up the process of getting naturally occurring worm poop in these pots that are growing my flowers or my vegetables. Same thing with the raised beds. Some benefits of this product is it doesn't stink. There's literally, it just smells like a fresh walk in a forest. Like nice, deep, beautiful organic matter. So there's no smell to it. So if you want to put it in your pots on your patio, or if you have a very small garden, this is a fabulous product. It's also not going to attract rodents, or even maybe your dog loves the smell of stinky stuff and goes and digs it. They're probably not going to dig into this product. So you can add it at a very basic rate. What they recommend is using you could use about half of this bag for a pot this size, which is pretty generous, but if you want to be stingy, you could use a little bit less. The point is you are inoculating the soil, and let's clarify what that term means. We are basically adding a bunch of really good microbiology to this pot, which then will thrive and grow on its own. We understand the importance of probiotics in human consumption. We drink them so that our tummies have really good microbiology. By adding worm castings, we're essentially doing the same thing. We're adding a bunch of bacteria into this pot or this raised bed to ensure that it can be super happy and super healthy. So those are some of the benefits of it. We use it as much as we can, especially if I'm growing something that's really precious to me, like all of my dahlias this year. They definitely got worm castings because I want them to thrive and I want the soil to be as good as I possibly can make it. Worm castings is a part of that. Some of the downfalls is that it comes in smaller containers. It takes think about how many worms it takes to make that much poop. It takes a really long time. So it's really hard to find in really big quantities. And in theory, you really should never need it in big quantities. This raised bed behind me, I should make sure that the soil in here is a good quality and that it has lots of moisture in it so that worms thrive on their own. And they give me worm castings over a period of time. But by adding this to the boxes in the beginning, I'm kind of kickstarting that process, right? I'm getting them off on the right foot very quickly instead of waiting 2, 3, 4 years down the road. So again, worm castings, a really amazing product, especially if you have precious plants that you really want to baby and give them the best thing possible. Now on another side, we have worm tea, okay? So worm tea, this is just like a tea bag, and inside of here is super concentrated worm castings. So it's not the same worm castings that's in here. It's actually what is at the bottom of the worm casting casters where the worm castings are collected, and it's the most concentrated and the most biologically rich, and there's a lot of microbiology that is living in this. And basically you treat it just like you would any tea. You can stick this in a watering can. You can leave it in there for a couple of hours. I do not recommend leaving this in water for really more than 6 to 8 hours because then it's sitting in stagnant water and all of that microbiology and that bacteria cannot thrive if it doesn't have any oxygen. So I like to put it in a bucket and then put it somewhere in my garden where if I'm working throughout the day, I can give it a little jostle, I can stir it a little bit to add oxygen to the water so that I can guarantee that the microbes are living. You can use this bag over several times and then you basically add that water to your pots, you add it to your raised beds, and again, I'm not fertilizing when I'm doing this. I'm simply adding a lot of really amazing microbiology to my soil that needs to be present for my plants to thrive. Now, you could do this on your own in the sense of keeping your beds really moist and having worms live in your beds. This is all gonna happen. But doing this is a way to jumpstart that process and guarantee that your soil is as happy as it can be the very first season that you start growing.